So this is take number 3 of filming this reflection video, and reason being, just now the first time I was washing my clothes and I realized the background was way too noisy. Take 2, I went downstairs, realized that it was equally if not even worse. Now the washing is done and I shall be trying, hopefully for the last time. If not, it's fine, we can always do this again. Basically today is just a video, a reflection of today's experience as a facilitator for a program called GIC Sparks. So a while back, I think about last year, I signed up for this program called it's a facilitator program where we learn all about interacting with the community and also bonding, trying to create bonds within people, forming connection points and relationships, and we learn how to facilitate these conversations in a variety of avenues. And I think the really good thing that I'm grateful for is that at first I wasn't chosen for the program, which is sad, but okay. I was really bummed by it, but then I don't know why, like I think a few weeks later or something, I got the message that I had been chosen and accepted in again, because I think a few people had backed out and perhaps I was just the next one that could go in. Either ways, I'm just glad the outcome was that I was able to be part of it. I think that the program that I initially signed up for was to do like trails with people, like walking along with certain people of the community. And although that program we were trained for it, I think, for a few sessions, the one that I went to today is actually a different one. And what happened is that I believe and I think that the social enterprise that this whole thing began with, I think they observe us, participants, they observe us during sessions, they observe us during certain simulations that we do. Like we had a counseling simulation that was very memorable, and I think from there they also observe and then they choose and shortlist certain people for certain projects. And this project that happened today, I was really grateful to actually be asked to participate in this thing. I think there were about 25 to 30 participants, 20 to 30 participants in the original sessions. But for this specific program, I think only about 6 people were chosen out of them. And I feel really honored to actually just be part of this. So what this, I think today, the goal was to actually bridge, I think, IT students with citizen books. So what are citizen books? They're basically people, who come from all sorts of different backgrounds, but they have for this session at least, it was people with disabilities. So you have some who, are visually impaired, or they are hearing impaired, and or they have certain, things like autism. And our job really is to be the connection point between the groups of students as well as the citizen books. And through that, they can ask questions, they can, number one, of course, ask questions, but I think the purpose is also to, number 2, raise awareness, and number 3, break stereotypes, and I guess number 4, of course, advocate for rights. I think all these conversations, their goal is mainly, I mean, to me at least, it's really just to really raise awareness within people. And I really think it's such an important thing to break all these stereotypes or perhaps stigmatizations that we may have of certain specific groups of people. And this could apply to any sort of conditions, whether it's a hidden condition or a very obvious and seeable condition. So I found this project extremely meaningful. Of course, at the start, I did have a bit of like fears, like what if I can't do this? What if I can't do a good job facilitating? It's not really an intimate thing, but it is considered quite intimate already. And I think I really love facilitating intimate group sessions, because it's so much easier to just for me at least, to maintain that energy and really ask thoughtful questions. And I really enjoyed my experience today. I think the other groups, I think they have different kinds of experience that were shared after the sessions were done, and I'm just grateful that my group, they were really such an amazing bunch of I only had like 4 students, so I think the original that I was told was that we would all have at least 6 students, but my group was like 4 students. But it really our conversations, it was, the students were absolutely like lovely. I think they were like 18 to 19-year-olds, and they asked extremely insightful questions. And so what happened was, I, of course, for my first time, this is my first official engagement, right, as a facilitator, and I was really like, I was a bit nervous. I was like, genuinely like, will I do a good job? What if I am awkward? What if I can't ask great questions? What if I can't even help others to ask great questions or good questions or meaningful questions or certain other kinds of questions or whatever questions? But all of these fears were really unfounded. You know how I also was a bit unclear of how this would be run exactly. But once I stepped into the actual thing, once I faced all these challenges head on, um, it made sense. It's this thing where some certain things we just have to experience ourselves in order to really just learn it. And I think facilitation is one of these skills. We have counseling. Counseling is also a skill. Facilitation is also a skill. Public speaking and hosting a show is also a skill. And I think nobody really starts out perfectly fine or perfect at the start. And even if you did start out perfect, there's always, I think, room to improve, especially when you reflect back. And if I had to reflect back, I would say today went extremely well, because even though there were some curveballs here and there, like I went to the wrong group at first, because there was this massive group, and I really didn't realize that there was another group behind. But I just made it work, and it was a really lovely experience. And if I had to really also reflect on today, I think the main things that I'm grateful for, and I think the main learning points out of experiences like this, facilitating such important, I think, societal discussions. There were macro discussions, there were micro discussions, there were personal questions, and I think, of course, our very, very kind citizen book, he was incredible. He has a hearing impairment, but he was so generous with how he shares all his information and what he's experienced so far. And the students were equally actually very respectful, and they were very kind-hearted, and they were worried. I think one of the learning points that we also had was that some of them were worried, like, what if I ask a question is too sensitive? What if I ask a very too straightforward questions? But we learned that in a way, by worrying overly about such things, we are also unconsciously treating people with disabilities, I think, as special people, when I suppose they just want to be treated normally. And that was what our citizen book had shared as well. Whenever because there was only 4 students, right? There's I could see there was that hesitation to share, there was that shyness to share. I think one of them was really, really quiet, but you could see that he was really trying to listen. And I think my job as a facilitator was to have a very acute sense of knowing when to speak up and when not to speak up, and just hold space for these people. And I think that's one of the best things I think I've learned from this whole facilitation training program, is that we really genuinely learn how to hold space for people. We know when to let go. We know when to perhaps prompt or like ask certain questions. And even the questions we ask, I think my aim at least is not to intrude or change the direction. Although changing direction is absolutely fantastic, but if I sense that there's a certain trajectory that they're trying to head towards, what I can do is to maybe add on a question that could help them lead to a clearer path of thinking. And I think that's why it's such an incredible thing that, it's really one of these things that you really have to just hands-on do it, jump into it and experience it yourself. Because theory is incredibly important, but, of course, what's paper is on paper, and experiencing something with actual, human beings who are so varied and they are different kinds of personalities, it's a totally different story. And that's why I think that with every experience that you do, there's always definitely rooms to improve. So I think, like what I mentioned, one of my jobs was actually to, prompt them. I think, or to facilitate conversations. There were certain moments where, of course, there were many moments where the talk got, quiet, and people were just, not sure what to say, or they were just thinking a lot. But I would say overall the students my group did such an incredible job in just being brave enough to just ask these questions, even if they were scared, even if they were nervous, And my goal, my very simple goal whenever I do this is, number one, of course, create a very empathetic space. And the way I create an empathetic space is simply to listen very actively, and also to be, like what I said, acutely aware of, I suppose, the changes and the little things that they might be hesitant to say, or just trying to connect these two groups of people together in a way that is dignified, that respects their dignities, but at the same time also creates possibilities and exploration, because we don't want to be just totally afraid and quiet. I was having dinner actually with some of the facilitators after this whole session. It's a volunteering thing, so and they had varied experiences. Some were great, some were not so great. And I think the main takeaway is that truly it is such a varied and we can never predict who we're going to meet, right? And so that's why it's important to be really like bendable and flexible. So with all these challenges like thrown at me, for example, I had like less than 6 people, which was like 4, and I was like, okay, that's really small. What if it doesn't go out well? What if I can't do a good job with facilitating and being empathetic? uh, but I tried it out, I did it, and it really did turn out well. And I think no matter what challenges there are, remain bendable, remain flexible, and I think also very importantly, remain open and believe in yourself. Yeah, so I definitely realized that I am pretty good at facilitating very intimate conversations. And yeah, I think something that surprised me, was that the I think the Citizen book, he shared with me, when I asked him, how do you think the session went? He said that he really appreciated that I had actually asked certain questions as well. Of course, I never asked questions to the point that it took away time from the students. I only asked when they really like had nothing to say, or like were just like awkwardly looking at each other and not sure what to do. I then prompted a question so that they could, perhaps go in a trajectory that might interest them, because if they are running out of ideas. And he said that he really actually appreciated what I did, because he's not had a facilitator who actually asked him personally like questions. And of course, we learned that the question that we ask, yeah, I think there's this like what I mentioned, right? This is thinking that you need to be really PC when you ask certain questions. But the reality is that with people with disabilities, right, I think they want to be treated, he shared it, of course they want to be treated as normal. So I think the whole PC thing, there's this fear, that's why the students were afraid. But I think there's this reassurance afterwards that don't be afraid, just ask me any questions. And I absolutely loved how the conversation went from this the students actually thought of all these questions before the actual session began. They had to be briefed and everything. They were briefed, what's going on, and they had a list of questions. But because there was this like reassurance that, hey, you can just ask whatever you want, just treat me normally like any other normal person. Because this cautiousness also inadvertently creates this like, oh, you're a special person. And I guess the whole point of this the advocacy of certain things is that no, they're normal people just like us. You don't have to be so afraid. And if something was truly uncomfortable or like too sensitive to ask, I totally appreciate that the lovely youth, these teenagers, they took the time and were my group, they were so considerate and kind-hearted, honestly speaking. And they dared to ask certain questions. But there were also some that were really shy, and like, what if I asked like they really cared about people's feelings, and I think that was so important. But at the same time, I really loved that they were also adventurous. And after the reassurance, they started asking like really like personal questions like you would ask a friend. And like or like, do you have a girlfriend, like like how's your love life like, your relationship. And it actually made the whole experience so much fun. Of course, they asked like certain questions like, how was the experience like for you being disabled, and how do you overcome certain challenges that you face. And they asked really such great questions, like do you ever see yourself changing your job scope and all that. And do you ever feel like, how do you deal with all these troubles that work has given you, being treated differently by certain people who are ignorant or may not understand. And they really took the time, and I saw that they were genuinely just thinking so compassionately on understanding things, just of course focusing on the disability, but also beyond the disability and what effects I think these disabilities actually uh might give them, for this, like whether it's a bad thing or a good thing. There and I yeah. And I think at the end, what I asked, I think, was when we were closing, was that what is one good thing that actually, was it me that asked it? I don't know. But there was a question being asked about like what's one good thing that has happened to you. Oh, he shared it, yeah, about disabilities. And because I asked him, is there anything that you like to share to them, to these students, that that you really want to talk about. And he really just shared about the point that yeah, this disability, it's hard, but there's actually good things. And he shared this really funny experience where he said he's a fantastic sleeper, he's a very heavy sleeper. And he just gets knocked out and it's amazing, which led to further questions of like, oh, what kind of alarm clock do you use then? And he uses a vibrating alarm clock. And so I loved that I was able to hold space for them. I love that they were able to hold space for each other. And I love that our citizen book he was an incredibly kind and, honestly speaking, such a generous person. And I think I'm really grateful for this experience. I mean, I realize how important it is now, that it's always in the tiny details of the things that, and the way I think we treat another person. We also had this discussion, certain conditions are invisible and it's hard to see. Certain conditions are obviously very visible, but no matter how it is, they're equally important. And I think I was really also very appreciative when one of them, was vulnerable and admitted that, she has a certain condition as well. And I think that I would love to do this again. And yeah, part of the facilitation job is definitely that keen sense of awareness and empathy. And finally, also the willingness to think deeply and to think introspectively. I really don't have much, specific expectations, for any of the students or people that join this thing. I guess all we can hope for is that, number one, we of course hold space for each other and maintain each other's dignity. Dignity is like really so important, and we all just want to make someone feel like no matter where they came from, no matter what has happened, sometimes these stories are just here to be shared. And what we can do is to either, of course, listen very actively, and to also, ask why, how has this experience made you feel? How do you see your visions for this project, this certain advocacy project? What would you like, what would you hope for to be different? And how has, having certain conditions or having certain things changed the way you view certain experiences, for example, leaving it very open-ended. And I'm so appreciative today that I really just had to make a vlog. I'm grateful that, number one, I held space. I'm grateful that number two, was really empathetic, and I'm so glad that the students felt so comfortable in the session to ask questions. I genuinely am so, and I also think part of that is that I was very patient. I think I took my time, and yeah, I just took my time. I guess I'm good at it, and I'm proud of saying that. Of course, there's probably a lot of things to improve, but overall, I think I did a pretty good job for my first ever time facilitating such talks and discussions between people, especially regarding certain things that may be a bit more tricky or sensitive, like disabilities, or like certain conditions that we, of course, while we want to treat them as normally, we also of course need to have empathy and dignity for them and for everybody who's in this space, to really just protect their dignity. So yes, I guess the third thing I'm grateful for is actually I think the experience that I've taken away. So this is, for us at least, this whole training was free, but of course we volunteer our time to help other people. In exchange for the skills that we receive, we are trained in different things, but I think what we get in return is, of course, these wonderful experiences. So it was a Saturday afternoon. Actually, I went to two volunteering things today. One in the morning, I think due to work, and a work volunteering thing, and number two is, of course, this wonderful thing that I'm in. And for me, I would hope that there will be such conversations with mental health struggles, and I just find this so incredibly important. And I also learned that it's really interesting that no matter where you come from, certain having this positive outlook, not always positive, but having this belief, I think, that things can get better, because you can be in the worst of situations, but really, I honestly realize now that it's these little things that we gain, that we have done well, that really just keep us afloat. Because it's so easy to just slip into the to the harshest side of things. That's the reality of certain bad situations that there are. For example, he was rejected 70 times, like 70 applications and he was only like accepted like four people replied to him for his job because of his disability, and that's obviously, you know, very harsh to handle. But I think he had, you know, he maintained, you know, a friend at every stage of his life, different friend at every stage of his life. And I just, you know, he has a relationship, and you know, it's so beautiful just being able to share these experiences with other people instead of just having this assumed knowledge of what a specific condition or a specific disability is. Because by having these stigmatization and these assumptions about certain conditions, and even word generalizations of such conditions, like, oh, you have this, everyone also has it, like that's really like very dismissive. It's important that we actually meet these people, and really actively listen and not judge and not assume things, leave things really open-ended. And honestly, I think what I gain, is that not only do I realize that I have so much capacity for empathy, I'm also pretty good at handling intimate conversations, or very intimate groups of conversation, and I'm very good at keeping it very natural and, you know, easy and gentle and also fun and explorative. And my experience personally was fantastic, even though I worked with a very small group of people. I think the questions that we asked were so much, and I'm truly grateful that I met these wonderful students, and also the wonderful citizen book. He was extremely generous with his stories and his experiences, and yeah, I would totally hope to do it again. I have learned a lot of things, and I've definitely gained a lot of awareness. So yeah, I'm grateful for this experience. So that's all my reflection of today's volunteering event with GIC Sparks. So yeah, see you soon. Bye.